I direct the Clarke program in East Asian Law and Culture here at Cornell Law School. And welcome to our biggest event of the year, our Clarke Lecture. And I am just delighted today to have our Dean, Eduardo Peñalver, with us. He's going to introduce the speaker. And so, Eduardo, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good evening. On behalf of the Cornell Law School and the Clarke program in East Asian Law and Culture, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Fall 2014 Clarke Lecture. Each semester, the Clarke program sponsors a lecture to bring to Cornell an extremely distinguished scholar to deliver a major lecture and to interact with our faculty and students. And today I have the honor of introducing Clarke lecturer Professor Soo-Hyuck Lee, who is the chair and professor and the dean of the Human Resources Development Center and Humanities Academy at Dankook University in Korea. Professor Lee has led a highly distinguished career in key foreign service and governmental positions in South Korea. He served as the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, the first Deputy Secretary of the National Intelligence Service, the Secretary to the President for Diplomacy and Trade, and in between all those, in his spare time, he was also ambassador to Yugoslavia and Germany. During his tenure at the South Korea Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Professor Lee was on the front line of major international developments and diplomatic efforts aimed at peace in the Korean Peninsula. He led the six-party talks as the head of the South Korean delegation and was deeply involved in the four-party talks. He's widely regarded as one of the most highly qualified experts on North Korean nuclear issues and on inter-Korean relations generally. Professor Lee has published 3 books on Korean Peninsula peace and unification questions. The first, Conversations with the United Germany, was published in 2006 by Random House Korea. Transforming Events and Analysis of North Korea's Nuclear Issues was published in 2008. And North Korea is a Reality, published in 2011. His lecture today is entitled 3 Hypotheses on Korean Peninsula Issues, about the destiny of North Korea and Chinese policy toward North Korea and the nuclear program of North Korea. It focuses on issues that are relevant not only to the Korean Peninsula, but really to the world in general. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Soo-Hyuck Lee.
Good afternoon. I am very privileged and honored by the invitation from this Cornell Law School. In particular, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to Professor Rice and Dean Peñalver. They introduced me and invited me today. Well, today I brought a very heavy and very tough lecture to you on the relations between South and North Korea or regional politics in Northeast Asia. In particular, I'd like to introduce the 3 hypotheses on the Korean Peninsula issues. Well, some of you or all of you may know that quite recently, about 3 days ago, North Korean High Delegate visited Korea. The 3 members of the entourage are really very powerful men. The first man is the number 2 in North Korea. The second man was almost number 3, but he was replaced by the first delegate. And the third one is the very powerful man in dealing with South Korea. He used to visit Korea several times for the negotiation between South and North Korea. So why did the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un send these 3 guys to South Korea abruptly? Just a few hours advance notice, they visited Korea. Why? In particular, these days we know that the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un has appeared in public for more than 1 month. Since September 3, he hasn't appeared on TV or in any other scene in North Korea. There have been some rumors that he has been ill or he has some political power struggling, but nothing has been confirmed. But only we learned that through the North Korean state media that he is not well because of his health problem. We saw him limping and very overweight, but we don't know exactly why he has been absent from public scene for so long period. Well, as I was introduced by then, I was dealing with the North Korean issues for more than 20 years. That was a very special case as a Korean diplomat. In the past, none of the Korean diplomats had a direct contact with North Koreans. But since the first nuclear crisis in 1992, South and North Korea delegates used to make contact in the United States, in particular at United Nations, in dealing with the North Korean nuclear issues. Since the first eruption of the nuclear crisis, more than 20 years have passed. And about 10 years ago, the second round of the nuclear crisis broke out. Already more than 10 years passed, but nothing has achieved, with the exception of the several documents, which became useless nowadays. Combining some elements or surrounding situations, I made up the hypotheses, 3 hypotheses in dealing with the Korean Peninsula. Today, I'd like to introduce my theory, my hypothesis to you. Let's think about the situation of Northeast Asia. Northeast Asia composed of China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan, including the United States. Of course, the United States is not the regional country of the Northeast Asia, but we used to say that the United States has the party to the Northeast Asia because of its influence of Northeast Asia. We have seen historically the conflicts among 4 big powers in Northeast Asia. Historically, competition between China and Japan, competition between China and Russia and Japan surrounding the Korean Peninsula on the Korean Peninsula territory. And sometimes there's a very serious fight between China and Korea, between China, Japan, between Korea and Japan. Nowadays, since World War I, there have been conflict over the Korean Peninsula between Soviet Union and United States. Recently, we are talking about the Group 2, in particular Northeast Asia, competition between United States and China. Due to this competition, we have found some difficult situations around the Korean Peninsula or over the Korean Peninsula. As you know, South Korea has alliance with the United States. North Korea has the defense treaty between China and North Korea. Japan has its alliance to the United States, as you know. Now, there is some struggling between China and Japan over territory issues. Some conflicts, some hegemony struggle, competition between China and the United States over Northeast Asia. How to deal with the territory dispute between China and Japan. How to deal with the division of the Korean Peninsula between South and North Korea. The situation of the Northeast Asia is very, very difficult in terms of the diplomacy. Let's go into the Korean Peninsula issues. Korean Peninsula was divided right after the independence or liberalization from Japan in 1945. An official division was announced in 1948 due to the North Koreans' objection to the unified general election. Almost 70 years have passed since the division. I may call the division as long division. It's an analogy of the long peace between Soviet Union and the United States during the Cold War. At the last moment of the Cold War, a very famous professor of the United States said that there is a long peace between United States and Soviet Union. And some analysts argue that the bipolar system between the United States and the Soviet Union enjoys the long peace, and the bipolar system would be very, very strong enough to prolong. But right after this kind of analysis, Soviet Union disappeared, dismantled, as you know, and Cold War finished. While Germany was divided with the East and West German, some used to say that unification on the Korean Peninsula would come first, sooner than German unification, due to the balance of power, different balance of power in Europe and in Asia. When I was a student at the university in early 70s, I used to hear that certainly Korean unification would come first. Then we couldn't expect the German unification. But about 20 years later, we found that German unification was realized. But since then, more than 20 years have passed. We still have a very heavy struggling or confrontation or competition between South and North Korea. I'm afraid that this long division might be an eternal division. Which country would help us to unify? Which country? China, United States, Japan, I cannot easily say that China would have reunification. Or should say reunification. Japan, maybe. Officially they may say that they support the reunification, but is that really happen? Does that really happen? United States, well, officially they may say that they would support reunification. That could be true, come to true. We cannot guarantee it due to the regional political game. The North Korean nuclear program has continued more than 20 years, as I said earlier. This nuclear program used to be described as a threat to the international community, world peace. But it's the vague word that the North Korean nuclear program was a threat to the world peace. I mean, it's that North Korean nuclear program would be a big obstacle for the reunification. As well as North Korea kills this nuclear program, we cannot expect the reunification on the Korean Peninsula. Which country among big four powers, United States, China, or Japan, would support the reunification while North Korea has the nuclear power, nuclear bomb? The division or the confrontation between North and South Korea added more difficulties on the process to the reunification. To put all these elements or factors in one field, I introduced 3 hypotheses. The first one is the destiny of North Korea. Destiny of North Korea. Second hypothesis is North Korea's nuclear program. Third, China's policy towards North Korea. As this hypothesis suggests, North Korean nuclear issue is the most urgent issue. The second urgent issue, the division issues. Third, North Korean regional issues. Let's think about the North Korean region, North Korean leadership. The young man, only a 31-year-old man, is controlling the North Korea after death of his father. Around the end of his life, Kim Jong-il, we used to say that 3 years after his death, North Korea might collapse. That kind of the rumors prevailed in South Korea. Of course, some of us argued that it didn't happen. But some of the conservatives really believe that North Korea would collapse after some years after the death of Kim Jong-il. Almost 3 years have passed. What happened in North Korea? What happened in North Korea? 31-year-old Kim Jong-un to prolong his grip on power. And how long? Then what's his prospect for the future of North Korea, or for the future of the Korean Peninsula. He can really reign in North Korea without any problem from now on. All these questions bring us to some strange feeling that North Korea might survive with the nuclear devices without any resolution of these issues. Thirdly, let's think about the geopolitical environment in Northeast Asia. When we are talking about the geopolitical order or political order or regional order in Northeast Asia, we are thinking about the competition between China and the United States. Their policies, I mean the US policy and Chinese policy towards Northeast Asia or towards Korean Peninsula, must affect the future of the Korean Peninsula. Now, it's time for us to go into detail on the three hypotheses. As you see on monitor, the first hypothesis is that North Korea will not collapse. Second, North Korea will not give up on its nuclear capability or nuclear program. So, China will not abandon North Korea. Some of the analysts or professors ask me whether I really want North Korea not to collapse. I really want North Korea will not abandon nuclear program. I really want China not to abandon North Korea. No, the opposite. I really want North Korea regime will collapse. North Korea will give up its nuclear program. China will abandon North Korea. It's kind of the paradox. Let's go into detail. Okay, the first hypothesis, North Korean regime will not collapse. Why did I put in this hypothesis? As I mentioned before about Kim Jong-il's death and collapse, with the same experience, when the first leader of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, was invaded, we used to say that North Korea collapsed right after the Kim Il-sung due to the struggle, political struggle for the populations, North Korean people's reasons opposed to government. But after his death, Kim Jong-il controlled North Korea for 20 years. Again, we got the same prediction that North Korea would collapse after Kim Jong-il. And then again, when Kim Jong-un finished his control 20 years or 30 years, North Korea will collapse. We have the same predictions. Why does North Korea survive so well? Why? Because of the North Korea's support or the inner circle power control, the unity among the political elites are very strong, so strong, enough strong to control. Why is there no antagonism against the government by the people in North Korea? As you see here, North Korean regime has gone through a number of critical moments, but managed to hold on. When is going to the limit? Sand pile is going up, but when critical time will come, when Kim Jong-un came to power, his age was 29. The world left at it 28-year-old man, 28-year-old boy, raised in North Korea. As you see, his hairstyle is very strange even to us. When we are talking about the collapse of North Korea, we have three meanings. First, collapse of Kim's family, hereditary succession of power. The second meaning of collapse is the regime transformation, regime change. The third definition is state extinction. Among three of the three, which one is most possible? The first one, the second one, the third one. I am personally interested in the third state extinction. That's what South Koreans want to see for the reunification. As well as about three cases come true, we cannot expect the reunification for the time being in my life with 20 or 30 years. We cannot expect the reunification as well as Kim's family's hereditary. Or with regime transformation, regime reform, maybe another strong man will appear and maintain tight control over North Korea, as we have seen nowadays on the North Korean part. State extinction means the collapse of North Korea as a state. It means North Korea must be absorbed by South Korea. But official position of the South Korea is that South Korea must not absorb North Korea. And I don't know whether that kind of policy position would be maintained. If we say that South Korea wants to absorb North Korea, we cannot expect any kind of dialogue between South and North Korea. We know why. Well, German case might be a good example to us. But can we expect that kind of happening on the Korean Peninsula? Well, for the reunification of Germany, Gorbachev or Soviet Union was most helpful. With his perestroika policy, his opening policy, his open mind policy, he saw the reality of the international politics. We can find such a man around the Korean Peninsula. We can expect the Chinese leader to have such a philosophy, such a policy towards Korean Peninsula. And we know that United Kingdom and France, both countries opposed the reunification of Germany. Mr. Thatcher, President Mitterrand, both of them strongly opposed the reunification. But finally, both of them were forced to agree to the reunification. I'd like to compare the German case, German reunification, with the Korean reunification case. But I'm really afraid that same thing might happen to the Korean reunification cases. Do they expect the Chinese leader support the reunification with some anticipation that the United States soldier would remain, would stay in the Korean Peninsula? The alliance between the United States and Korea, South Korea remains. Then China won't agree to the reunification by South Korea. I thought this was some strange conclusion that China might not support the reunification as far as the alliance between the United States and Korea remains. So, reunification by the South Korea might not be realized so quickly as I expect. Second hypothesis, North Korea will not give up on its nuclear capability, nuclear bomb. When the first nuclear crisis of North Korea broke out in 1991, that time we found that North Korea secretly tried to produce plutonium. They had the reprocessing facility of plutonium from the reactors, which was brought from the Soviet Union. They built up most of the facilities for the reprocessing process. And they took out the spent fuel with the reactors and they reprocessed them for the production of the plutonium. That was called this fourth North Korean nuclear crisis, 1991. The Security Council of the United Nations adopted a resolution demanding North Korea to stop all of the activities of nuclear program. North Korea reported that they didn't produce the protein. They lied. But finally, there was agreement between the United States and North Korea in general. That is called Geneva Agreement. North Korea promised that they will freeze all the program. But that promise was not realized. They secretly conducted the reprocessing process and produced the protein. We found that they had produced about 25 or 30 kilograms, from which they could produce about 5 or 6 pounds. And then 3 years have passed, with on and off international concerns. In 2002 year, United States made an announcement that North Korea has the uranium enrichment program. All the world was surprised again. Now this time, uranium production enrichment. First crisis, plutonium crisis. Second one has uranium enrichment crisis. As you know, it's very difficult to detect the activities for the enrichment of uranium. But anyway, 6 particles was found among 6 countries: United States, Russia, China, Japan, and South and North Korea. Since the first 6-particle session, they have produced several documents. In the end, North Korea did not keep the promise. Of course, over the last 1 decade or 2 decades, North Korea has conducted 3 times nuclear tests, as we know, and 3 times long-range missile tests. With the United Nations Security Council sanctions, but we are now sensitive about the North Korean program. I forget this urgency of North Korean nuclear program. North Korea produced nuclear material. They increased their capability in terms of quality and quantity. Now we don't know how many uranium bombs North Korea has, because it's, as I said, almost impossible to detect the uranium enrichment facility. North Korea reported Security Council's sanctions and international community's demand to stop the nuclear activity. The reason is that they need them. They need the nuclear capability for their survival. Without the nuclear program, they believe North Korea might be invaded by the United States. They want to keep the nuclear bomb for the protection of their survival. But none of us believe that the United States or South Korea invades North Korea without the argument from China. But China may agree to that idea that North Korea should be invaded by South Korea or the United States. That's the reason why I wrote the first paragraph. North Korea is to formulate security strategies from an international party's perspective. Now, China would not support the North Korean invasion for South Korea as it did in 1950 for the Korean War in 1950. Regional order, regional political environment has changed in Northeast Asia. The relationship between China and South Korea becomes very strong. As we know, last June, Xi Jinping Chinese leader visited South Korea. He has to get visited North Korea. It's very rare that Chinese leader visits South Korea first. They don't have such example. This is the first case Chinese leader visited South Korea. When we negotiate with North Korea for the dismantlement of North Korean nuclear program, I want to know North Korea's real intention with this nuclear program. This nuclear program is negotiation chip for getting more assistance from South Korea. Oh, this is the really the security purpose. North Korea might use nuclear bomb over to South Korea territory in case they are threatened by South Korea or the United States. I suggest that this is not necessarily either option between for security or for negotiation chip and the both. I tried to get some hint of North Korea's real intention with this nuclear program. But I failed in finding out the real motivation of the nuclear program. Of course, I tried to, when I met the North Korean chief delegate. Actually, he didn't know what the North Korea would do with this nuclear facility, nuclear devices. So, paragraph I wrote, it is not a question of choice, but rather a multidimensional question on opportunity. Through the long and patient negotiations with North Korea, we might find this resolution of nuclear program issue. North Korea frees or dismantles finally dismantle the nuclear program, nuclear devices, then North Korea could get the guarantee from the United States that North Korea regime would be secure. So we can give the security guarantee to North Korea. Now, it's time for North Korea to think about the usage of this nuclear program. Ultimate weapon can be ultimately useless, like the Soviet Union nuclear capability. Did they use nuclear capability at the time of dismantling of Soviet Union? Soviet Union has never used the nuclear weapon. It's so huge number of bombs. United States has said case. Even the United States has been facing very serious problems in Middle East. United States has never used that bombs in Middle East, except the bomb over Japan at the end of World War II. If there's military conflict over the Korean Peninsula, United States or China would use the nuclear bomb? I don't think so. It's a small country, small territory. Then they use them. Then what's the outcome? North Korea, we know that if they use even only one bomb, one nuclear bomb, that means dismantling or collapse of North Korea. So it's not easy for North Korea to use this nuclear bomb against South Korea. China does not support them. Then how North Korea do something without the support from China? Officially they may produce this kind of footage, the alliance between China and North Korea. But in substance, they could not enjoy this kind of strong, tight relation between China and North Korea due to the relations between China and South Korea. Third hypothesis, China will not abandon North Korea. While these two parallels are theoretical terms, I'd like to talk about the real perspective of China about North Korea. I think in practice, and in practical reasons, China might not support North Korea anymore in dealing with North Korean nuclear program. China may believe that North Korea would not survive for so long. When time passes on, North Korean residents might abandon this regime. But for time being, China may need North Korea for Chinese national interest. I may suggest that China prefer the division of the Korean Peninsula, as I said before, as well as South Korea has alliance with the United States. China believes that Korean Peninsula would be unified by South Korea. In such a case, the United States may want to keep their soldiers on the Korean Peninsula. In such a case, China should face American soldiers all over the border between China and Korea. This kind of the regional political situation may be North Korea for the time being, until North Korea has some conclusion that reunified Korea would not become a strong alliance with the United States. Maybe China wants neutral state on the Korean Peninsula. But in the history, neutral state has never been successful. Even a very small country such as Switzerland today, but Korea is not a small country. The population is more than 70 million. You know, the economic power of South Korea is number 12 in the world. How such a country be neutral? Well, this couple is very interesting, saying that the Chinese, we have very limited influence on North Korea. This expression came when we, I mean the South Korea and the United States, urged or demanded China to exercise its influence on North Korea to dismantle the nuclear program. They used to say, why we don't have such a North Korea. I heard that sentence several times in the negotiation, during the negotiation. North Koreans historically don't like Chinese entry. When Kim Il-sung conducted liberation activities in China, Kim Il-sung was not treated well. And when we established relations with China, North Korea got very furious towards China. They called China as a betrayer. Even though their sentiment is like that, they still need support from China. Each country can support China among the surrounding countries. China is a only country which also has resistance. Now, because of due to the Security Council sanctions, only China has given assistance, economic assistance to North Korea. The stability of North Korea is of the utmost interest to China. It means China needs time to become competing power with the United States. They need more time for their economic development. They need more time for their political stability. also China may understand North Korea's security anxiety. And for violent conflict on the Korean Peninsula, also the China's present national interest, as I said just before. Now, it's time for me to get a conclusion of my lecture. I have brought the 4 very basic elements for the understanding of North Korean behavior. First, realising international politics. These following 4 points are for North Korea, from North Korea perspective. North Korea take advantage of the international politics order, such as anarchy in international relations, security as the top priority of national interest. Second, balance of power. North Korea believes balance of power. They understand the mechanism of regional order. That's the reason why they stopped before the totalitarian war over the Korean Peninsula. When 2 years ago, in 2011, they sank the South Korean revolution and they launched the artillery bomb on the small island. They didn't expect a total war. They stopped just before becoming from down to total war. They are scared of total war. That's the mechanism of regional order, regional politics of the Korean Peninsula. This is a very interesting sentence. North Korea used to say that they wanted to unify through the invasion of South Korea. But I don't think that's true. That's the reason why I don't believe that there was a war, total war on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea wants the protection of their own territory, not siege of South Korea territory. North Korea territory is enough for North Korea regime. They really want a small country rather than a big country. Why? They know that there is no chance for North Korea to resolve South Korea. So, North Korea's purpose is to create the North Korea phobia rather than to wage total war. Deriving from over 4 elements, I advise South Korea to take farming strategy, prepare military capability, and make North Korea fear of war, total war. But conquer North Korea will not bring good outcome. From time to time, there are some consultants in South Korea that we have to be fine, even with war. We have to prepare war for the unification. ideology of the national will derived from the national consensus. Some of you may know that there is an architect division of opinion in dealing with North Korea, in dealing with domestic politics. We are divided. Right, left, conservative, and progressive. Pro-North Korea, pro-United States. We need a political philosophy armed with the ideology among the individuals in South Korea. We have to understand the ideology, political philosophy, as well as the understanding of the history. We need a national consensus. We are split among the generations, all the generations, too conservative, young generation, too progressive. The middle is very narrow, divide, sharp. 51% conservative, 49% progressive. Sometimes in the third previous government, progressive government, but only less than 51. So domestic politics in South Korea is very different. During last several months, since the sink of the boat passenger ship, about just less than 3 million passengers on ground. Since then, and the National Assembly, Parliament, has passed a single act because of the confrontation between the ruling and the opposition party. Then, let's think about the confrontation between South and North Korea. Should we be unified in dealing with North Korea? Very difficult situation, political situation. But we believe in the democracy of South Korea. We believe in our ideology. We believe in our national power, people's ability. So we can easily overcome the situation. But anyway, we really hope that North Korea dismantle the nuclear program, and then we can forward the day of the reunification. I'd like to see the reunification ceremony before I die. But I cannot guarantee. Some say that it will take more or less 30 or 50 years for the reunification. Where in 2015, we can see the reunification. Nobody knows. Long division will become eternal division. That's what I'm worried about. Thank you very much for your listening.
Maybe I'll start by asking you, just to start with, in this country, when we hear about North Korea, we often, there's a perception of it as a very rational place. So you talk, the phrase madman is often used to describe the leadership. Your portrayal of North Korea is as a hyper-rational state, right? With almost all of the principles of international relations still apply. So I wonder if you could comment on the rationality of North Korea as a state.
Hyper-rational is good word to describe North Korea. You know, when I began the meeting with North Korea delegate, they said that you have to be very careful. They are very mad men. They are very mad, very bad. You know, I have good experience. In 1993, we formulated 4-party talks dealing with the Korean Peninsula issues. Peaceful structure. We had a negotiation in Geneva. I was the founding father of the 4-party talks when I was in the United States, in Washington, D.C., Korean embassy. We had a meeting in Geneva with the United States, China, and North Korea. One journalist, Korean journalist, came to me and asked, "Where is Mr. Soo-Hyuck?" He didn't know me. He didn't know me by face. He knew me only by name. I asked him why. Oh, I want to talk with him. So I instantly said that it's me. Why? Oh, that's so small. How do you deal with North Korea? With so small hand. I thought you were very big and with some very aggressive face. But as we learned from my lecture, North Koreans are very rational. You know, they have survived from their poverty for 17 years. Of course, right after the war, in Korean War in 1950, in 60s and early 70s, North Korea was richer than South Korea. But from the 70s, 80s, 90s, downgrade, pyramid. During 70 years, or over the last 20 years, most of the negotiators from North Korea are alive and survive in any political conflict. They are still negotiating. They are still working. But in South Korea, we change the delegates so often, every year. I was the longest head of delegate for 3 years. But my successors, only 1 year. Every year, about change the head. Because of this experience of North Korea, North Koreans are expert in dealing with South Korea. They know all of the negotiation details. Very rational. We don't say that North Koreans. Actually, they are mad. They are parasites. Personal ability, not from madness. Rationality.
I'd like your opinion on if you think Kim Jong-un has been deposed in a sense because they held, what is it called, Supreme People's Assembly, and he was not there. They did not delay it because he was sick. And if he has been deposed, what's going to happen with the other two brothers?
Well, it's not the first time for the Supreme Leader absent from the National Assembly. It's not the first time. Kim Jong-il several times were absent from the meeting. as well as North Korea state media showed the footage of Kim naked over Kim Jong-un must be alive in terms of power. If he's really ill, or of course he's ill, his condition is not so good. Or state media announced that Kim Jong-un is not well, discomfort. Right? So, as well as North Korea's state media reveals the condition of health, it means still he has a great power. If he's in difficult situation, political situation, then the high-ranking government official of North Korea to the visit South Korea 3 days ago. So even though it's not, his health is not 31-year-old boy, overweight, limping, still survive, I think, in terms of political power.
Way in the back, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to thank you very much for the lecture. I'm Japanese, but I grew up in China, so I'm really interested in learning about how East Asian and geopolitical issues could affect North Korea. And I know it's hard to tell what the future of, say, China, US, Japanese relations will shape out like. And I know it's a very complex answer, but I was wondering if generally you think a stronger alliance between China, Japan, and US will push North Korea further inwards into isolating itself, or perhaps create an external pressure for North Korea to reach out, especially if they're losing China as an ally. I know in your hypothesis, it was about how China will not abandon North Korea, but say if China weighed that a stronger alliance with Japan and the US was more favorable than keeping nuclear relations. How do you think North Korea will react to those environments?
If you need a very detailed or substantive answer to me, I need 1 more hour. It's very difficult. It's not easy question. Some of you might have read newspaper reports that there might be a possibility for the alliance between China and South Korea. And quite recently, some of the Chinese analysts argue that there's a possibility for both countries, for China and South Korea, to make some alliance. But we have to pay attention to the policy of the United States. The United States may allow South Korea to create the alliance with China because of the balance of power, because of the competition between United States and China, competing power, pursue the hegemony. Is it possible for China, for South Korea to tilt towards North Korea, to China? It seems very difficult. But South Korean government has tried to show that they would like to keep the neutral, the middle area between China and United States. We have seen some examples, some cases from the recent days. United States has urged South Korea to join the MD system, but up to now, South Korea has resisted to join because of the Chinese position. If we join that MD, then China would be furious against South Korea. South Korea might face some sanctions from China, economic sanctions from China. We cannot survive if China stops the economic cooperation with South Korea. And the relation between China and Japan, relationship with the North Korea, China, as I mentioned earlier. Well, how to manage this regional order? We have to clear answer. We have to wait and see for more or less 10 years maybe, until the stability in North Korea and the development of the nuclear program in North Korea. Maybe within a decade there might be the third nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula. As I said, the first nuclear crisis in 1991, plutonium nuclear crisis. Second one, 2002, uranium crisis. Third one, what kind of bomb we can expect, we can imagine. The third one.
Hi, Professor Lee. Thank you so much for coming. You mentioned in your interview with Korea Jung-Ang Daily that from the onset, North Korea had no intention of disarming its nuclear weapons, but that a continuation of the six-party talks was necessary for organizational purposes. Given recent news by China's Xinhua News that I saw on Twitter, in January 2014, they mentioned a possible resumption of the six-party talks. And I was curious as to your opinion, in what direction do you see these party talks heading in the next decade under Kim Jong-un's role, and how will it differ, if at all, from Kim Jong-il's leadership?
I am a founding father of the six-party talks. I made it. So I have some sympathy or some emotional sentiment about the six-party. And I have had an interview with journalists. I faced lots of questions whether still I prefer six-party talks, or still I believe that the six-party talks will bring success. But nowadays, I'm very confucius whether six-party talks could be the only unique method way of resolution of North Korea. As I mentioned before, there was a Geneva Agreement between the United States and North Korea. And they made the Geneva Agreement for the freeze of the North Korean capability. So maybe North Korea wants the bilateral talks with the United States. But the problem is China. China is the chair country of the six-party talks. So how could tell China that China is not needed for the resolution of the nuclear program? It's also regional, the balance of kind of balance of power. So maybe, when we created six-party talks, we had thought that the six countries' involvement too many. Before we had four-party talks for the formulation of the security system or the peace mechanism on the Korean Peninsula. Four countries: China, United States, South Korea. But for the nuclear program, six countries, including Japan and Russia. North Korea was against the idea of inclusion of Japan at the time, in particular Japan. But as soon as Russia joined, Japan should be invited. I strongly urge that Japan must be invited, as well as Russia is involved. So six-country talks formulated. But since 4 years ago, six-party talks has never been repeated. So I don't know whether we can expect for the six-party talks to reopen sooner or later. Maybe there might be some ceremonial meeting, but the result would not be produced from the 6 talks. They are must be the bilateral talks with the United States and North Korea. And then they agreement to be brought to the 6 talks, the formal agreement among the 6 countries. It's pity that in such a case, South Korea could not be involved, but we have to be patient.
Do you think that China would be less supportive of North Korea if it were more confident about
Last one?
do you think China would be less supportive of North Korea if it were more confident about its power in comparison to the power of the United States?
Well, as I said, China needs North Korea for their strategic reasons on national interest. In Security Council, China supported the resolution which imposes sanctions against North Korea. In the past, until 3 years ago, North Korea has never agreed on the Security Council resolution. But as we know, Chinese leader Xi Jinping visited South Korea. He has never visited North Korea yet. And the relationship between China and South Korea in terms of politics and the economy, China is tilting to South Korea, but it doesn't mean that China is able to abandon North Korea for the sake of its national interest.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you think sort of the North Korea government sees as its long-term future? Because it sounds like a lot of what you've talked about points to them wanting to be isolated from the rest of the world. And it just seems like, how is that sustainable in this world that's increasingly, globalized? And it's just fascinating that they've been able to sustain themselves for 70 years. Do you really see that as going on for another 70 years?
Let's think about their experience of North Koreans. The Lee dynasty finished in 1915. Lee dynasty was very authoritarian regime, as you know, kingdom state. Right after, the Lee dynasty finished due to the colonialism by Japanese. Since then, North Korea had been under the Japanese colonialism, harsh treatment, and we were mobilized for the war by Japan to China, and many of South Koreans and many of Koreans were mobilized to Japan or Southeast Asia. So we passed a very difficult time during the colonial period, 36 years. And right after the ending of the colonialism, right after the end of World War II, North Korea, Kim Il-sung continued authoritarian government. So now, the people at the age of 80, the oldest man, haven't had any experience of free state. They never enjoyed freedom in their life. Well, the young generation say, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il period, how they enjoy the freedom. They don't know the freedom. Of course, from time to time, some information they get that South Korea is a very free country, or has been changing. But most people in North Korea never had such experience. they don't know what the freedom means. We have a good story about Gorbachev. Even though Gorbachev undertook the perestroika, open system, he visited the United States and he visited the supermarket and asked the people managing the supermarket, how could they bring such goods into the supermarket? By state. Even Gorbachev didn't understand the capitalism, free market system. Then how could North Korea, even though they know some information about the freedom, but as far as they don't experience freedom, they could not pursue the freedom as we wish. So even though North Korea maintains authoritarian system, that doesn't mean ordinary people feel oppression by the government, by the leadership. That's their daily life, everyday life, under the pressure. They might not feel any kind of oppression, being oppressed by the government, but they don't have such experience. They don't have such experience as enjoying freedom. Thank you very much once again.
Well, that's a very pessimistic note to end on. Thank you very much.